going to start a series. And I'm really excited, actually, about this series. So today we're going to kind of dive in and look a little bit more into like history of the Bible. So we're going to kind of go a little bit Old Testament. We're going to do some learning today. So I hope you guys are ready. So I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely hate moving. How many of you have ever moved houses? Okay, Norm and I have been married for 13 years. And we have moved 3 times. And I kind of have this itch that, I know a lot of us have talked about it. Everyone's like, you need to buy a really, really good house with a backyard so we can have a youth house. Apparently you guys want me to buy a house for you guys to hang out all the time. So Norm and I are actually in talks now about looking into it. I am not a commitment person. I don't like the idea of like committing on something like that. I love the idea of renting and being able to move if I want. But now Norm and I are to a place where we're like, all right, I think we have to do it. We need to have a place where the kids can come, spend time with us. If we say you're our family, we have to share our home with you. So now we need to get a big enough home for y'all to come to and share. But anyways, I absolutely hate packing. Okay, that is the least of my wants and needs, and I just don't want to. Okay, not only do you leave your house, and your house is comfortable. You know where everything is. Everything kind of has a place. Maybe your house is too crowded and things don't have a place. But for the most part, you know where things are. In your kitchen, it's all organized a certain way. When you get a new house, all of that changes. You rearrange everything, and then you have to pack everything. And my least favorite thing to do is pack. I hate boxes. I hate this. I hate the idea that, first of all, you have to either go around and collect these when you're moving. So that means you're like at Meijer, and I don't know about you, but I will go to Meijer early in the morning when we're moving. I'm like, hey, you got any boxes? Because I don't want to buy them. And they're like, oh yeah, and they give me all these boxes, and I got to load them in my car. And then if I don't have enough, I'm up at Walmart or Menards or Lowe's, and I'm buying all these boxes. Then you put them together. Then you have to fill these boxes. And I don't know about you, but I'm like super particular. So I want my boxes labeled. Like this is going to say kitchen, and I know exactly what's in this box. But you have to be careful when you're packing, because when you're packing these boxes, you can't make them too heavy. But yet you want to use all of the space in the box because you only have a few boxes. How many you get is limited. And so you want to try to like find the science of, I want to fit as much as I can without making it too heavy where the box is breaking or falling apart. And so it's just tedious work, and it's something that I don't like to do. And if you guys or your parents or anything like me, every time I move, I end up having a box or two that doesn't get unpacked. I'm either just done over it, because as the mom, I have to unpack my room, my kids' room, the kitchen, the living room, the bathroom, maybe another bathroom, maybe another room. So we have all this work that we're doing. And so by the time I'm done, I'm like, you know what? I'm not even sure what's in this box, or I'm not even sure where to put this stuff. So I'm going to put it in the closet. And I can tell you honestly that I know for a fact there are probably 4 boxes in my poor sweet Carter's room that have been there for 8 years. That when I moved there, I was like, oh, he's little. He was a baby when we moved in. I'm like, oh, he doesn't need his closet. I'll just store this stuff here and I'll put it away later. 8 years later, it's still there. Okay, it's still, and I can tell you this, if you were to throw those away, I would have no idea what was in them. So that's just kind of how it is, right? If you are anything like me, you have done that. But how many of you would agree that if we put something in a box and we leave it there, that the items that are within this box can never ever be used for their actual purpose, right? It's never going to reach the potential that it has. Let's say I have a family photo in here from one of my favorite times that I was with my family, but that picture frame, if it's in this box, is never going to be displayed to be memories for me every time I look at it. Or maybe those of you that play sports, you pack your glove and your mitt, your mitt, and then you have your ball. But if you leave it in here, it's never going to be used to help you practice to get to the game, to make that huge catch, right? That glove and that ball is not living up to the potential that it has because it's stuck in a box. Or maybe you're super artsy and you have all of this, canvases and paint and all this stuff, but if you leave it in the box, it's not going to spark your imagination and creativity and cause you to make a masterpiece, right? It's not going to give you an idea. You're not going to be inspired to paint because it's stuck right here, right? That's what happens when we leave things in a box. But if you leave something in a box, you're kind of capping its ability to be useful and valuable in your life, right? So with that being said, as I launch this new series called Box Cutters, I'm going to suggest that there are some of us in the room today that have capped the value and the ability that God has in our life. Some of you have done it and don't even realize you're doing it. But I guarantee we are doing it. I know there are times in my life that I have done this with my relationship with God. See, it's not that God isn't important. I'm not saying that. Just because you have this doesn't mean that you don't value your, God, or that you don't love him, or you don't have a relationship with him. It's just that you have put him in here, in this box. So this is going to be called today our God box. Okay? This is our God box. So I'm going to pull this chair over and we're going to set our God box up. Okay? So many of us have placed God inside of a box. See, we want to have our own sense of identity. We have this idea of who we want to be, and it's easier to live that out if God stays right here. Or maybe it's a relationship you want to pursue, that it's easier if we leave God right here. Because a lot of us know that maybe that's not the person that God has for us. Or maybe we know that this is not the age we should even be focusing on that. Or maybe we know that we're putting too much time in relationships with other people versus with God. And so we like to keep him kind of in this box because maybe there's a goal that I want to achieve, but I don't feel like that's what God has for me. So I put him in this box, and I stop the ability of him in my life. We have this sense of, if it's right here, if God is right here, I can take it out when I want it, when I need it. So how many of you would say that maybe at camp, okay, how many of you went to camp? I love camp, my favorite time of the year. We go to camp and we're like, oh, this is the time I'm gonna let God out of the box. So what we do is we get to camp and we open it and oh, comes God. And we're all excited and we're at camp for a whole 4 days and we're praising and we're worshiping and we're like, oh, this is the best feeling of my life and I just love this. But you know what happens is we begin to pack our bags and we're gonna get in the car with our mom and dad and we're like, oh, hold on, God, I gotta go home. I gotta go back to my family and my friends. Let's just put you back where you go. And then we pack God back up in the box and we leave the event that we just did and we go home. And what that does is that stops the ability of that relationship, that moment, the experience to actually affect our lives. Because this is where we put him back. Or maybe it's One Heart. How many of you have been to One Heart? That's a 2-day conference, and I love One Heart. Same thing. It's a conference, and there's speakers, and we get to the conference, and we're like, oh, hold on, God, you're going to come to this conference with me? And we open the box back up, and we get in the vans, and we drive there, and we have 2 days of just pouring our heart out, and we get all the feels, and we're like, I'm never going to be the same. And then it ends, and then the next morning, we wake up, and we're like, oh, hold on. I just left the conference. Hold on, God. Okay, right where you need to be. And then we go back to our daily lives. Some of you open your box on Wednesdays. It's better than just once a year, I guess. Some of you are like, oh, but I come Sundays, Wednesdays. God's out 2 times. I let him out of the box twice a week. And we think that that's okay because that's what we're getting used to. And we're like, oh, I'll just let him out when I need him. Some of you let God out of the box when life is not easy. Some of you think of it as like, oh, God, I'm having such a rough time with my family or with my friends, so I'm going to let you out of the box so you can do something for me. We get to pick and choose when we value God coming out of the box, when we want him to do something in our lives. We feel like, as Christians, we pick and choose. And some of you sit in the room today, and you're confused on why is my faith not where it should be? Why is my relationship with God not where it should be? Why do I not know him the way that I feel like I should know him? But then you go home, and this is where God is at. So where does this come from? Where does this idea of the God box come from? And I think the answer might shock you, because this is not something new. Do you know that a long, long time ago, like Old Testament time, God put himself in a box? And you're probably thinking, wait, what? I heard that wrong. No. God put himself in a box. And I want you guys to understand what I mean. So what we're going to do is we're going to read into Hebrews. And so what this is Hebrews is in the New Testament. What he's doing is he's actually writing to some of the, to Jews, and he's saying, hey, back in the day, God had a covenant with his people. And that covenant he had with his people was that he would come and he would dwell and he would have his presence all put in this box. And that box is called the Ark of the Covenant. And so he came and he lived in this box. And so the writer in Hebrews is trying to explain to these people that that's what they had to do back then to have the presence of God with them. But he was also trying to explain to them that we don't have to do that anymore. We're not going to get into that part today. We're going to focus on the history of why it happened before. Why was God ever placed into this box? Okay? And I'm going to start in Hebrews 9, and I'm going to start right here in verse 1. And it says, that first covenant between God and Israel had regulations for worship and a place for worship here on earth. There were 2 rooms in the tabernacle. In the first room were a lampstand, a table, and sacred loaves of bread on that table. This room was called the holy place. Then there was a curtain, and behind the curtain was a second room called the most holy place. In that room were a gold incense altar and a wooden chest called the Ark of the Covenant, which was covered with gold on all sides. Inside the ark were a gold jar containing manna, Aaron's staff that sprouted leaves, and the stone tablets of the covenant. The stone tablets of the covenant would be the 10 Commandments, okay? And I actually have a picture. So Jeff, will you put the one up that has the actual words on it that shows it? So what this is, you guys, this is what it looks like, okay? So this is where God used to dwell. This is the tabernacle. And so this is the outer courts right here, you guys, and this is where anybody could come and they would do their offerings, okay? Then you had the holy place, and this is where just the priest could go in. This is where they would then come in on your behalf, and they would, again, do an offering. And then this is the place called the Holies of Holies, okay? And that is the place where only a high priest could enter. Okay, Jeff, you show them the other picture? I just want another visual of what it looks like. This is what it would look like. So if I was coming in to make a sacrifice because I touched something unclean, or because I did something I'm not supposed to, or whatever, I needed to be ritually clean again, I would come into this very first part, and you can kind of see there's like a lamb laying up there. That's where I would prepare my sacrifice on the tables. The square in the middle, that's the altar that I would actually sacrifice on. And then the little pool thing in the back was like full of like incense or oils or something. Okay? That is where, and then the little building is where the priest would go, and then the high priest. Those are the 2 rooms that it's talking about right here. Okay? In the Ark of the Covenant is where God would be. That's where his presence resumed. So we're going to read a little bit further. And it says in verse 5, above the ark were the cherubim, an angel sculpture of a divine glory, whose wings stretched out over the ark's cover and the place of atonement. But we cannot explain these things in detail now. Now, atonement. Anyone know what atonement means? Okay. The atonement is another word for payment. Okay? So what it's saying is the atonement is the sacrifice. So in order for you to cover your sin, there had to be death. How many of you have heard the scripture verse, for the wages of sin is death, right? Okay, that was the price for sin. And I know that it's kind of gruesome and it's kind of gross to think that that's what God wanted from us. He wanted us to find an animal, to kill it, and then to sacrifice it to him. And it was like this whole process of cleaning it and taking out the blood and preparing the animal properly, then laying it on the altar. And I know that's kind of crazy, but if we're being really honest with ourselves, when you offend the eternal God of the universe, when you offend the eternal God of the universe, that is that is such a gruesome act against him. That's a gruesome sin. And so in order for that to be covered, it also takes something kind of gross and kind of crazy, because sin is unthinkable. And so now God wants something in return, and that's death. So that's just the way that it is. For the wages of sin is death. And so that's why they had to do that. That's why they had the altar. That's why they had it where anybody could come into the outer courts, and then the priest could start going into the holy places, and they also made sacrifices on our behalf. And I want to read just a tiny bit further. And then it's verse 6. And it says, when these things were all in place, so that means everything is ready, the stuff has been prepared, sacrifices are being made, so when everything is in place, the priest regularly entered the first room. as they performed their religious duties. But only the high priest ever entered the most holy place, which was the last one that we saw, which was the Holies of Holies. And only once a year. And he always offered blood for his own sins and for the sins that the people had committed in ignorance. You see, only the high priest could step foot in this room, and only once a year. Only once a year was he allowed to be in the presence, the actual presence of God. Now that we kind of see where the box comes from, I want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into this. Why do you think that God put himself in a box? Why do you think that he didn't allow the people to be close enough to him? Why? If we're being really honest and we're like sitting down and we're like, this doesn't make sense. When something doesn't make sense, let's dig deeper. Let's really think about it. Let's ask questions. Why? So I want to explain something to you in kind of a weird way. So hang in there with me because I think this will make sense for you. This is Pikachu, okay? This is a Pokemon. This is a Pokemon who is an electric Pokemon, okay? In the game, it's a nice Pokemon. It's not evil, it's not mean, it's actually it's a good, nice Pokemon. So let's say that in real life, I catch myself a Pokemon, and I get Pikachu. If I take Pikachu, and I'm like, you and I are going to go swimming, and we're going to go to Dad's, and we're going to swim together, guess what? I'm dead.
Yes.
Because water and electricity don't match, right? So me and Pikachu can hang out, we can be best friends, we can do whatever, but once I enter water, I cannot be in the presence of Pikachu. The electricity that he has is too much for me. And even though he didn't mean to, even though Pikachu and me are buddies and I caught him and now we're best friends, I'm gone. You see, this is kind of how it is with God. You see, God is kind of like electricity. And if God is like electricity, then that would mean sin is like water. And when we sin, it's like we're all wet in water. And so then if we try to go in the presence of God, and we're soaking wet with sin, we're soaking wet with shame, the world around us, like we're swimming in a pool of it, and then we're covered in it ourselves because we are not righteous, we are fleshly, and we walk into his presence, and guess what? It's too much for us to bear. And this is true because if you read in the Old Testament, there were times that somebody would touch the Ark of the Covenant and they were not clean. They had sin. They had not been ritually cleaned or cleansed, and they died. So when God decided, I want my people to have my presence, I want to be with my people, he knew at the time, okay, because this is Old Testament, you guys, he knew at the time he was too holy to actually be in their presence. He was too holy that if he did, they would not survive. Do you know that sometimes the priest, they would tie a rope around the priest. And when the priest would go in, there was a bell on it, and the bell would ding, and if the bell stopped making noise, guess what? The priest wasn't quite holy enough. And when he walked into the Holies of Holies to be there to make the final sacrifice, the once a year, gone. And once the bell stopped dinging, they'd be like, oh, there's another one. And they'd pull the priest on back out because apparently when he made the sacrifice, he didn't do it right. Or maybe he didn't actually follow one of the laws. I don't know. But regardless, even the priests sometimes were not found to be holy enough, to be righteous enough to be in the presence of God. So what he did is he said, you know what, I'm going to come down and I'm going to find a way, but I'm going to protect you the best that I can, and I'm going to put myself in this box for your safety. It's for your safety. So my question is to you, if that's the case, then why would this make me feel better? Why would I live my life boxing God up? And the truth is that this box makes an unrighteous person feel safe. This box makes my life easier and okay, because if I let him out and his presence is all on me, guess what? I can't be sinful. I can't. And so my question to you today is, are you boxing up God? Because maybe the way that you live doesn't match his righteousness, doesn't match his holiness. Are we putting God in this box because we're thinking, you know what? When I'm in his presence, I feel guilt. When I'm in his presence, I feel a little shame. When I'm in his presence, and this is where he's at, and he's following me around, and he's living life with me, just like Pikachu. God and I jumped in some water, and I'm not gonna live. Are we not doing what we're supposed to be doing? Why are you boxing God? Because I can tell you, you guys, there are as many seasons in my life that when I let God out of the box, it hurt. Because what I was doing was not okay. And when we let God out of the box, the music we listen to might make us feel guilty. The movies you're watching might make you feel guilty. Maybe the friends you hang out with. Maybe that girl that you really have a crush on, or that guy you have a crush on. And when you let God out of the box, he kind of starts to tell you, like, you don't even know who I say you are. And you're going to try to find a boyfriend or a girlfriend to fulfill you somehow. But you don't even know your identity yet. How about you let me fill you first? Because after I fill you first, you're going to receive the person that I created for you. And you're both going to be 100% the people you're supposed to be. So when you get together, it's not 50-50, it's 100 and 100. And that's the way I intended for it to be. Or maybe this changes your friend group a little bit. Maybe you stop cheating on tests or lying to parents or living life the way that you want to live it. You see, we can have two choices, you guys, because boxing up God is Old Testament. That's an old covenant. And when Jesus came, that all changed. And I'm so excited that we get to talk about that in the next couple weeks. But you guys have a choice. We can live with an old covenant to God. And we can say, you know what? This offends me. This upsets me. I don't feel safe with you out of the box. And the only reason I wouldn't feel safe with God out of the box is because I'm not living the way he asked me to do. My righteousness doesn't match his righteousness. And so you guys have two choices. You can live life like this. And you can put a cap on who God is for you, who you're going to be, the plans he has for you, the purpose he has for you, the call he has on you. And you can say, God, this is it. This is all I want. But then you've put a cap on who God can be in your life, what he can do in your life, the places you will go in your life. And that's your choice. Or you can say, you know what? It's going to hurt. And it might take me a minute, but God, I want your righteousness. I want everything you have for me. I don't want to be anything. I don't want to be anything than who you've created me to be. And although it's going to be harder, because that means you make life choices, life changes, and you become the person he wants you to be instead of the person you think you want to be. But I promise you, if this is the choice you make, to let God out of the box, your heart's desires will change, and you will think like him, desire like him, care about people like him, love like him, look like him. And that's my question to you. To the unrighteous, the box is safety. But God didn't call us to live safe. He called us to live bold. He called us to be fearless. So I don't know where you are with your walk with God, but as we close today, I want to challenge you. During this next series, you guys need to do some heart work. Because I truly believe there are probably some of you in this room that right now have put a cap on who God is. And during this series, I want to challenge you to open the box and to be a box cutter and let him out. So I'm going to ask you guys to bow your heads as we close tonight. And first and foremost, if there's anyone in this room who has never accepted Christ, I don't care if you've been to church 99 times, and I don't care if you've been to church once. If there's anyone in this room who has never accepted Christ, first of all, he is the God of salvation, of eternity, and the promises he had for you are just endless. He sent his son for you, who died in his place for you, and there's no reason for you to feel shame, guilt, any of that. It stops right here, and you give it to him. Some of you have lived your life for Christ, but you have put God in a box because the way you live does not match the way he walks. It does not match the way he's called you to live. So you have boxed God in worry and in fear that you can't handle his presence. So if you are in either of those places where you've boxed God up and you're thinking, you know what, Nicole, during these next few weeks, I want to learn how to take God out of a box. I want to learn how to have a real relationship with him. I want to learn how to dive deeper with him. If you are in that place or you've never accepted him before in your life, I want you guys just to slip your hand up. Doesn't matter what side of that you are on, because a lot of us have boxed God. You guys, I go through moments where I get frustrated and when I get angry and I'm confused and I'm like, you know what, Lord, I just want to put you in a box right now because I don't like the way that it's being handled. I feel like you could do more for me. I just went through a really hard season where I could have put God back in a box and been like, no, that wasn't okay. I didn't like the way that ended. I don't like the way that felt. So I want to box you up. But I choose to leave him out regardless of what it means for me, because it is not my life, it is his. All right, guys, I want you all to pray after me. Jesus, thank you for taking my place on the cross. That when you died, you took my sin and shame. So I can have your place. I believe that you are alive. And I ask that you fill my heart. Take away my sin. Wash it away and make me clean. And God, I open up the box. And I give you permission to do what you want with me. Father, I just ask that you search the hearts of these students. And that as we dive into this series called Box Cutter, Lord, that you will begin to show them, reveal to them who you are, who your son is, who your spirit is, who you are, that you will begin to just stir up this desire to live a careless life, and not careless with the world, but careless for you, that we don't care what other people think. We don't care what the world says about us. We don't care what other people do to us, that we just want more of you. That we want to open up the box. We want your presence to be all over us. We want your spirit to rest on us. And that can only happen if we choose to open the box. So Lord, I pray that as we begin this series, Lord, that you begin to do heart work in these students. You begin to just like turn something within them, Lord, that shows them places that they're hiding from you, that they're boxing you up, that they're closing you off, and that you will reveal to them who you say they are, the plans, the purpose that you've created for them. You only, God, for it is yours. They are your children, sons and daughters of the Most High, and we ask that you be present in their life. I thank you that you are no longer a God that has to be boxed, but that your spirit can be with us at all times. I pray, Lord, that you go with us, anoint us. Amen.